of those kinds of issues, and what you would call the rights, everything that was happening on the right side. The economic discourse has much changed since Amartya Sen, the Nobel Prize winner in economics a few years ago, published a book called Development as a Freedom. That was a significant paradigm shift in the sense that he merged several aspects of the international discourse, meaning the parts of the discourse that deals with economic development, with the social discourse, with human rights, with the justice as a value in a sense. So when we today are approaching issues of rule of law and growth, we are no longer approaching it from a very strict economic standpoint because the lines have been blurred. When we think of growth, as you will notice in many of our literature, we are talking about inclusive growth. We are talking about sustainable growth. And all of those things cannot happen without these dimension of justice, without rule of law at the core, actually, of what we are doing. Rule of law has implications for many dimensions of economic and social development. If you want to have sustainable economic growth, you are talking about having an adequate business climate in which enterprises can thrive. In order to do that, you need to have a legal framework that is conducive to enterprises being actually able to thrive. But you also want to have enterprises adhere to a set of rules and an ethos that means that while they are thriving economically and being an engine of economic growth, they are also doing it in a context where they are providing economic opportunities to the large majority of people. And they are respecting rules such as labor rules and other types of rules. You also need, in order to have sustainable economic development, you need to have strong institutions that are also trusted by the people. I think Irene mentioned in her speech that institutions can discriminate, institutions can exclude. So strong institutions are not enough. You need to have an ethos that is behind what those institutions are about, and very much the ethos is guided by the rights of people that the institutions have to be able to uphold and promote. We do believe that in the development arena, for an economy to develop in a sustainable manner, you need to have those strong institutions, inclusive institutions. The role of my department in the World Bank is actually to bring this dimension of inclusive institutions as a necessary ingredient of inclusive growth in order to facilitate the work of government, to facilitate the work of enterprises, and also to empower citizens to be part of what is going to make the economy work. In order to have inclusive economic growth, you also need to have mechanisms for a peaceful settlement of disputes. And that takes me to justice institutions in every country, among other mechanisms for fostering peaceful settlement of disputes. The judiciary is an accountability mechanism that is extremely important, that is extremely powerful, that needs to be independent, that needs to be credible, that needs to be respected and trusted by the citizenry. So we have also a very important program in the bank for fostering all of these dimensions of the judiciary in many countries, including in my colleague from Peru, some programs that we have been implementing in Peru in order to strengthen the judiciary. Having inclusive growth also requires access to services. access to services by the people. I had mentioned earlier that institutions can discriminate in some cases. Institutions can be difficult to access. We talked about access to justice by disadvantaged groups and others. So access to services is something that we believe is crucial. That is the fundamental role of institutions. And we support access to justice in many of the countries where we operate. But also we are supporting access to other services through the rule of law. As you know, the post-MDG, the post-2015 development agenda includes in the current draft a goal on peaceful societies. And one of the targets is about providing free legal identity to all. Without legal identity, no one can be in a position to exercise rights and access services. So many services, could be health, could be insurance, could be, you name it. People would ask you for papers. You don't have papers, you are excluded from access to those services. So we are very happy that, at least in the current draft, this is an issue that is highlighted in the post-2015 agenda. And we already have many programs in place in many countries to support legal identity and as a facilitator of access to rights and access to services. We intend to ramp up actually our involvement in this area in the context of the post-2015 agenda. And finally, as has been mentioned a lot in the speeches, in the preceding speeches and comments, if you want inclusive growth, you need the people to be empowered. You need the people to have, to be at the beginning and at the end of development. They are the ultimate beneficiaries of development efforts, but they should also drive it. That is, again, going to the concept of inclusive institutions. We are having a major focus now as World Bank on how you can develop development solutions, having people, having citizens at the center of those development solutions. In my area in governance, we are putting a strategic focus on inclusive institutions because we have come to the realization that just going and strengthening institutions based on technical solutions that we all know, how do you do a civil service reform, how do you do public financial management and the like, was not enough. That you need to actually incorporate the citizen dimension in all of those technical approaches. And we are committing as an institution to doing that in a very meaningful manner, so that we are looking at the various ways we have been approaching certain issues and asking ourselves, how do you change the paradigm from looking at citizens as consumers of public services to citizens as those who are actually co-creating public services with the institutions that are supposed to serve them. So it is a citizen-centered approach to development that we are promoting as an institution. After many years of learning by doing, making mistakes, we are coming to this realization that there are so many things that used to be separated. Actually, they are fundamentally intertwined. Rule of law is intertwined with many of the objectives that we want to achieve in the development arena. So that's why we are having this very important push in this area. As I mentioned to some of our colleagues earlier, we have just created in the World Bank a very large global practice called Governance Global Practice. It is the largest global practice in the bank among many other global practices, and it is devoted to actually making sure that institutions continue to matter in development, that institutions are made trustworthy, that institutions are strong, that institutions are at the heart of how you push the development process in many of our member countries. So I'm delighted, as I was reading the IDLO's strategic plan, that we are so aligned in so many different respects. And I am delighted that IDLO is a partner of choice for us. As I read the vision, a world where every person lives in dignity and under the rule of law, and the mission to enable government and empower people to reform laws and strengthen institutions to promote peace, justice, sustainable development, and economic opportunity, we could have written exactly the same thing. So it is nice to see this alignment between development institutions working towards the same goal, with the need to connect further, partner further with the member countries that we serve, and ultimately the people who live in those member countries that we are also about to serve. So thank you again for this opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cisse. You introduced actually in a very clear way this concept of inclusive growth, which is at the very heart of the agenda post-2015, and also other concepts. But I take in particular this, your point on the need for strong institutions, strong but accountable. Basically, this is the concept of the accountability, which goes hand in hand with transparency. And also another interesting reference, business need a legal framework of certainty and predictability for acting in the most successful ways. But at the same time, you mentioned shortly the concept of the corporate social responsibility, which is also the underside of the coin. I believe we have a few minutes for a second tour, and then probably we can pick up a few questions from the distinguished audience. I would ask Mr. Correll for, let's say maximum 3 to 4 minutes for a second tour. In particular on this issue, what are the chances from your unique perspective and your previous experience with the United Nations of having an international consensus on these issues, on the rule of law and the agenda? This is a very political issue. Is it true that, this is an agenda of part of the international community or some group, etc.? Actually, from what we heard from our distinguished panelists, this is a very widespread need and recognition of these issues. Mr. Correll.
Well, thank you very much. I think this is highly interesting. All panelists have touched upon an issue that I will focus on. But also, before I do that, we speak about the rule of law. What do we mean by the rule of law? There are long, long definitions about it. I use a very simple definition when I'm speaking to people, certainly people that are non-lawyers. Very simple, 4 elements. The first is democracy. Why? Because only in the democracy you can have legitimate legislation. The second element is proper legislation, including respecting international standards of human rights. And I can't stress enough the core element in the rule of law, protection of human rights. The second element, proper legislation. The third element